Cancer is a word no one ever wants to hear. Not even the giants who seem untouchable inside the ring. Behind the bright lights, roaring crowds, and ring-shaking slams are those moments where life and death hang in the balance, when a wrestler is no longer a superstar, but just a regular person in a hospital gown. Today, we're looking back at the names that once made the whole wrestling world hold its breath as they stepped away from the ring to battle this cruel disease, and how they came back like true warriors. Let's get started right now. Wrestling Sphere, go! 1. Bret Hitman Hart. In almost every list of the greatest WWE legends of all time, Bret Hitman Hart's name is right near the top. His entire career is tied to the image of a cold, precise ring general, someone who plans every move like an artist performing on the canvas. But outside the spotlight, there was one fight even a perfect competitor like Bret couldn't dodge: his battle with cancer. In 2016, on his personal Facebook page, Bret shocked fans when he revealed he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. This wasn't some minor issue you could brush off. Every year, this disease takes the lives of around 26,000 men in the United States. For someone who had gone through hundreds of matches and countless injuries, hearing the word cancer was still a brutal blow. Yet true to the hitman persona, Bret didn't panic and didn't surrender. He stepped into this new fight with calm, discipline, and full trust in the treatment plan his doctors laid out. Just a few days after that first announcement, Bret gave the world a much-needed sigh of relief. The surgery was a success. He made it through a risky operation, slowly recovered, and gradually regained his strength. Bret has repeatedly emphasized that regular checkups literally saved his life. Without those routine exams, the tumor could have been missed until it was too late. That's why today, he can still stand in front of crowds and share his story as a survivor. The match against cancer didn't have an opening bell or a closing bell, but once again Bret Hart managed to do what he always tried to do in his career: walk through danger, endure the pain, and step out the other side as the one who had his hand raised. 2. Michelle McCool. To many fans, Michelle McCool is known by two titles: former Divas Champion and the wife of The Undertaker. In the ring, she came across as a cool, confident competitor who seemed perfectly put together from her entrance all the way to every move she executed. But away from the arena lights, Michelle faced a battle no one ever wants to experience: a fight with cancer. During a routine health check, Michelle decided to have a few moles removed, something that sounded simple and harmless. But from that, just to be safe visit, doctors discovered that one of those moles was cancerous. With a single test result, her whole world seemed to freeze. Even for someone used to bumps, bruises, and pain in the ring, hearing the word cancer was incredibly hard to accept. Michelle chose to share her story on social media, not to seek sympathy, but to warn people about how important it is to listen to your body and get regular checkups. If she had ignored it, skipped the tests, or delayed treatment, that tiny spot on her skin could have quietly grown into a real nightmare. Instead of spiraling into fear, McCool chose to confront the problem head-on. She followed every instruction her doctors gave her, stuck to the treatment plan, had surgery at the right time, and monitored her recovery closely. Thanks to early detection and a determined attitude toward protecting her health, Michelle came out on top. Today, she is cancer-free, able to enjoy life with her family and occasionally appear in front of fans with the relaxed smile of someone who has just walked back from the edge. Michelle McCool's story reminds us of one thing: sometimes, the most important match doesn't happen in the ring, but inside your own body, and if you take it lightly for just a moment, it might be too late to kick. 3. Roman Reigns. For years, Roman Reigns has been the face of dominance in WWE. The image of a cold, imposing champion, walking to the ring with that unmistakable tribal chief aura. But behind the vest, the entrance, and the championship gold is a man who's been locked in a quiet battle that has lasted more than a decade: chronic myeloid leukemia, CML. Reigns was first diagnosed back in 2007, when his pro wrestling career hadn't truly taken off yet. Instead of collapsing under the weight of it, he chose to live with the condition, follow his treatment, and keep chasing the dream of stepping into a WWE ring. For a while, it seemed like everything was under control, until 2018, when the disease relapsed. The moment Roman stood in the middle of the ring and announced he had to step away from WWE to focus on treatment was one of those nights where the entire arena fell silent. People suddenly saw that behind the unbeatable giant was a human being who gets scared, who has to face cold test results just like anyone else. True to the spirit of a warrior, Reigns didn't let his story end there. He came back stronger, sharper, and slowly built one of the most dominant personas in company history. Becoming the face of the partnership between WWE and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, LLS, wasn't just symbolic. It was his way of turning his personal struggle into motivation for others fighting the same battle. In April 2024, Roman shared that he's still on long-term oral chemotherapy. The disease hasn't completely disappeared, but it's well controlled. And even while taking medication every day, he's still performing at the highest level, still headlining big matches, still carrying himself like a champion who refuses to back down. Roman Reigns isn't just winning in the ring. He's living proof that even with chronic leukemia, you can keep writing your own legendary story. 4. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. For the past few decades, Hacksaw Jim Duggan has always been one of the most familiar and beloved faces in wrestling. That rugged look, down-to-earth personality, and endless energy have been etched into the memories of generations of fans. But chances are, we wouldn't still be seeing a smiling, healthy Duggan today if he hadn't made one tough choice years ago, choosing his health over stubbornly clinging to the ring. In 1998, while his career was still rolling along steadily, Duggan received devastating news. He had been diagnosed with kidney cancer. For a wrestler who's used to injuries, aches and pains are just part of the job, but hearing the word cancer is something completely different. It's not an opponent you can beat with a few big moves. Standing between continuing to wrestle while his body was crying out for help, or stepping away to focus on treatment, Duggan did something not everyone has the courage to do. He walked away from the spotlight and put his life ahead of his career. He went through a draining treatment process, checkups, medical procedures, and countless quiet moments spent staring down his own fear. But just like when he stepped through the ropes, Duggan refused to give up. His fighting spirit, positive attitude, and the support of his family and fans helped pull him through the darkest stretch. Looking back, that decision was clearly the right one. Today, Hacksaw Jim Duggan is still here, still healthy, still able to show up in front of the fans, sometimes hopping back into the ring or joining special events. Every time he appears, people don't just see a legend from the past. They see a man who had the courage to put his health first, and because of that, he gets to keep smiling and shouting, "Ho!" with the crowd for many more years. 5. Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper is the perfect example of a wrestler fans didn't just see as a TV character, but as family. His career was built on that sharp tongue, rebellious attitude, and a wild energy that never seemed to run out. So when Piper announced in 2006 that he'd been diagnosed with lymphoma, a lot of people reacted like they'd just heard an older brother had fallen ill. Social media, forums, wrestling shows, everywhere you looked, people were sending him love and support. But in true Rowdy fashion, Piper didn't step back and disappear quietly. He went through treatment while still popping up here and there, always cracking jokes, always messing around, making fans feel like, this old man isn't going down anytime soon. After several long, grinding years, Piper proudly announced that he had beaten cancer. It felt like he'd won another long-running feud. Only this time, the opponent wasn't some heel in the ring, it was death itself. Truth is, Piper already had a reputation for being hard to kill. His life had brushed up against the edge more than once. He'd been stabbed, been in serious accidents, and even survived a plane crash. Every time, he'd get back up, return with that half smile and the same cocky, defiant attitude fans knew so well. So when he made it through cancer too, it only made that image stronger, a tough, stubborn warrior who refused to bow to anything. Sadly, what cancer couldn't take from him, his heart couldn't hold on to forever. In 2015, Roddy Piper passed away from a heart attack. He didn't fall on the canvas, and he wasn't beaten by the illness that once haunted him. He slipped away quietly after winning the biggest fight of his life, the fight with cancer, leaving fans with the memory of a Rowdy who never ever tapped out. 6. Ric Flair. In the wrestling world, Ric Flair has always embodied flash and resilience, the nature boy with the sharp suits, glittering robes, and that iconic whoa, burned into the memories of generations of fans. But behind those bright lights, in recent years he's had to step into a completely different kind of fight. One with no championship belts, no scripted finish, a battle with melanoma, a serious form of skin cancer. News reports about Flair needing surgery stunned a lot of people, because everyone thought this was a man who had already survived every storm life could throw at him. Before the operation, Flair didn't pretend to be invincible. He openly shared what he was going through, spoke honestly about the disease, and asked fans to pray for him and send their best wishes. Seeing a legend who once stood on top of the wrestling world turn to social media to ask the community for strength was bittersweet, a little heartbreaking, but also very human. It showed a Ric Flair who could feel fear, but still refused to give up. Fans all over the world rallied behind him, turning his surgery into something the entire wrestling community was watching and worrying about together. The skin surgery in mid-2025 became a new turning point in Flair's life. And then came the moment everyone had been hoping for. He appeared on X, Twitter, thanked the medical team that had treated and cared for him, and dropped one short but powerful line, "I'm now cancer-free." Just 4 words, but behind them was an exhausting journey of checkups, test results, waiting rooms, and constant anxiety about his health. Something that, at his age, means more than any title he ever held. Ric Flair being declared cancer-free wasn't just great news for him. It was a source of inspiration for countless fans dealing with illness themselves. A man who spent his life in the ring, known for glory and controversy, ended up moving people with the way he quietly fought outside the spotlight. And in true nature boy style, he didn't just survive. He did it with that familiar sense of pride, like he just stepped out of another war, straightened his robe, and smiled back at the world. 7. Jim Ross. In the wrestling world, if the wrestlers are the soul of the match, then Jim Ross's voice is the heartbeat. He doesn't need to step into the ring or throw a single punch. With that deep, slightly raspy tone and his signature storytelling style, JR became a part of countless fans' childhoods. From his days as a legendary WWE commentator to his current run behind the desk in AEW, the name Jim Ross has always been tied to some of the most explosive moments on screen. But in May 2025, the man who'd seen every kind of injury, drama, and shocking heel turn had to face the toughest script of his own life, a diagnosis of colon cancer. This time, the match didn't happen inside the 4 corners of the ring, but in hospital rooms, operating theaters, and long days waiting on test results. JR openly shared with fans that he had to be hospitalized for surgery to remove the damaged part of his colon, and once again asked them for prayers and support to keep his spirit strong. By late June 2025, the good news everyone had been hoping for finally arrived. Jim Ross updated his condition, saying the surgery was a complete success. The doctors were pleased with the outcome, and he was now cancer-free once more. No longer stuck in that limbo between fear and hope, his health began improving noticeably day by day. That familiar voice slowly regained its energy. His steps were still careful but more steady, and the fatigue in his eyes started to fade. From lying in a hospital bed, Jim Ross began talking about returning to the AEW commentary table. Not in a rush, but with firm determination. For him, sitting behind a mic, watching new generations of wrestlers write the next chapters of this business is the most meaningful way to live after walking out of a fight with illness. And for the fans, just knowing good ol' JR is still here, still calling the action, still making them feel something. That's a victory more beautiful than any main event. 8. Jake, the Snake, Roberts. Jake, the Snake, Roberts is the kind of wrestler whose name alone already feels unsettling. A tall, intimidating man with a dark stare, walking to the ring with a massive snake draped over his shoulders. So many childhood memories of fans are tied to that image. But behind the cold, ruthless character on TV was a real life full of cracks. A career that once reached the top was slowly dragged down by addiction, bad choices, and years of self-destruction. At one point, people genuinely thought Jake would only be remembered as yet another tragedy in wrestling. But Jake never completely stayed down. From rock bottom, he started climbing back up again, slowly but steadily. He gradually left behind the habits that were killing him, learned to live sober, and chose to face his past instead of running from it. Just when fans began to see a new Jake Roberts, older, slower, but clearly clearer-minded and more at peace, fate decided to mess with him one more time. In 2014, doctors told Jake he had cancer, with a tumor located behind his knee. Hearing the word cancer is enough to make anyone think of the worst, and at Jake's age back then, the danger felt even more real. Fortunately for him, and for the fans who still cared, the disease was caught early enough. Jake threw himself into a new kind of fight. No more DDTs in the ring, but a life-or-death surgery in the operating room. The tumor behind his knee was removed. He made it through the operation, and slowly began to recover. Since then, Jake, the Snake Roberts has regained his health and still appears from time to time, sharing his life story like a living reminder. No matter how dark your past is, no matter how terrifying cancer might be, as long as you're still breathing, you still have a chance to fight, and to win. 9. Zack Ryder. Long before he walked down the ramp with a big grin and the catchphrase, "Woo woo woo," Zack Ryder had already lived through a childhood most people can't even imagine. Back when he was still in high school, his biggest worry wasn't an opponent in the ring. It was an invisible enemy growing inside his body. Doctors found a tumor in Zack's foot, and further tests showed it had already spread to his lungs. The kind of news no teenager should ever have to hear, at an age where life is supposed to be about homework and pick-up basketball after class. What waited for him wasn't glory, but a stretch of hospital rooms, needles, and the smell of disinfectant. Zack had to go through chemotherapy. His hair started to fall out, his body grew so weak that just walking a few steps felt exhausting. On top of that, he faced multiple surgeries as doctors tried to remove the damaged tissue. The physical pain was one thing, but the feeling of hanging between life and death at such a young age was what really wore him down inside. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos, Zack Ryder held on tight to one thing. The vision of standing on a WWE stage, lights blazing, music hitting, and him walking out like a real superstar. Cancer could knock him down, but it couldn't take that away from him. Round after round of treatment went by, his body slowly recovered, his medical numbers improved, and then one day, the doctor told him he'd made it through. In the years that followed, fans only saw the fun, flashy Zack Ryder, the guy with bright gear, goofy energy, and a knack for making crowds laugh. Few people remembered that behind that smile was someone who had once lain in a hospital bed, wondering if he'd even see tomorrow. In the end, Zack didn't just win his fight with cancer. He actually grabbed hold of his WWE dream. He became living proof that sometimes the greatest winner isn't the one holding a title belt, but the one who refuses to let fate write the final chapter. 10. Zack Gowen. Among all the defy the odds stories in wrestling, Zack Gowen's name is one that makes people stop and think. He was diagnosed with cancer when he was still very young, and at an age when most kids are just learning to run, Zack had to face a brutal choice: lose his left leg or lose his life. The surgery took place when he was only 8 years old, and from that moment on, everything in his world had to be relearned from scratch. How to walk, how to balance, and how to accept the new body staring back at him in the mirror. But one thing was never cut away: his love for pro wrestling. While many assumed his ring dreams were over, Zack only held on to them tighter. He trained in conditions nobody thought were realistic for a future wrestler. With just one leg, he still jumped, still took bumps, still got back up, still practiced moves that people with two healthy legs struggled to pull off. The urge to step into the ring, in every sense of the word, became the force that pulled him through years of insecurity and pain. Eventually, that determination led Zack Gowen all the way to WWE, and he didn't show up as a pity story, but as a legitimate superstar, who just happened to have one leg. He even shared the screen with icons like Hulk Hogan, something plenty of fully able-bodied wrestlers never got to do. Ironically, the moment that made him most famous was the night Brock Lesnar absolutely destroyed him on TV in the early 2000s. On the surface, it looked like a one-sided beating, but to many fans, it was the clearest example of Zack's refusal to quit. From an 8-year-old kid losing a leg to cancer, to a performer recognized worldwide on WWE programming, Zack Gowen's journey feels like a statement. Your body might be limited, but if your will stays intact, you can still step into any arena you've ever dreamed of. 11. John Cena. To most fans, John Cena has always been the embodiment of strength and endurance. Jacked physique, packed schedule, bouncing between movie sets, talk shows, and then suddenly popping back up in a WWE ring. People are used to seeing Cena overcome the odds against any opponent, so almost no one would imagine that what really worried him wasn't some giant wrestler, but sunlight and a few small spots on his skin. In interviews in 2025, Cena revealed that he had twice been diagnosed with skin cancer, and both times it started from little patches that just looked a bit off, the kind of thing he almost ignored. Doctors had to remove cancerous areas on his chest and shoulder, places that had been exposed to the sun for years during training, filming, and outdoor photo shoots. For someone whose career is tied so closely to his physique, those incisions and scars aren't just marks on the body. They're a reminder that no one is untouchable when it comes to illness. Fortunately, the cancerous spots were taken out in time, without serious complications, allowing him to carry on with his work as usual. Instead of keeping it private, Cena turned his experience into a message, urging men to get regular skin checks and not brush off strange moles or unusual patches. He emphasizes that wearing sunscreen, putting on a hat, and covering up in the sun doesn't make you any less manly. It's just smart self-protection. Because sometimes, the most dangerous opponent is the one that looks harmless, hiding right there on your own skin. These are the journeys of warriors who defeated one of the scariest battles in life before stepping back into the ring to conquer it once again. If these stories inspired you, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Wrestling Sphere.